A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another live session of GETI Talk. My name is Shilpi. I'm the Relationship Manager with the Global Education and Training Institute. I have Dr. Gopalakrishnan, who is the Deputy CEO of GCM Group of Schools in Firozabad, that's in, yes, Firozpur, Punjab, sorry. And he has a research in what you call um, in neuroengineering, and he is actually going to be speaking about something that how students learn a neuroscience perspective. That is, we know the methods how the children learn. We have learned about different kinds of methods that teachers use in the class, as to and different, like for example, flip learning. Then you have project based learning. So these are the methods, but then how do actually children learn? So the neuroscience behind it, this is what Dr. Gopalakrishnan is going to talk about. He has done his PhD from Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, Louisiana, Switzerland. So welcome, Dr. Gopalakrishnan, and thank you for joining in the Disruptive Education movement. And the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Ms. Shilpi. It's a great honor for me to appear in front of you, and that I got this platform the platform very well named Disruptive Education. Yeah, indeed, there were different disruptive technologies that came into effect. First, a few centuries ago, the printing came up, and that actually was a first of its kind, a disruptive technology that changed the education in the global arena. And then the digital technology recently was another disruptive technology. So right now we started talking about different aspects when it comes to modern education. As Ms. Shilpi rightly said, we talk about flip mode of learning, we talk about blended mode of learning. But in all these aspects, whenever you discuss with any school principals, any parents, or even some companies who come up with some products, they often talk about students are not interested in learning. Students are not motivated to learn. And if you really do not, follow them up very closely, or sometimes they even say that when we were during the Corona time, when we were conducting exams online, they are often concerned that students would cheat. So why all those things actually happen, and why there is a lack of motivation among children when it comes to learning? So in order to probably understand, most of the time we talk about the problems, or we talk about the techniques, but maybe sometimes we somehow overlook into the science behind it and what actually happens during learning, or as a matter of fact, any associated things, including assessments and examination. So I have here a few slides. I will go through some of them. Not very hardcore neuroscience or biophysics. I try to make it kind of as simple as possible, so that most of my viewers must be educators. So let's start. I have a few slides to share with you. Right. My slides are visible to you? I guess my slides are visible to you. So let's start. So neuroscience of learning.
Yes, they are visible.
So when you think about, when you look into the neurobiology perspective, learning, if you have to ask a neurobiologist to define in a most simple form what is learning means, learning involves changes in your brain. Learning means changes in the brain. So what sort of changes are happening in the brain? So when we think about that, there are a few terminology like neuroplasticity, neurogenesis. These are all very technical terms, but I will explain you what those things actually mean. But before getting into that, I just want to start with this very famous quote from Plato, the great Greek philosopher, that he said that the direction in which education starts, a man will determine his future in life. Now, you probably recall this in connection with the new regulations or new suggestions by the government of India in light of the national education policy, that we want to give more importance to the early childhood education. The reason he said it, some 2000 years ago, that a man's future is determined by his early education that he receives in his life. So this thing is probably, you might have seen this quote that people usually say that, okay, I just finally discovered what's wrong with my brain. On the left side there is nothing right, and on the right side there is nothing left. So it is a funny kind of quote, but it means a lot. So what I hope some of you might know the meaning of it, but in a very simple forms, I can say that our brain has two equal halves, left side and right side. What left side does is not what right side is meant to do. And in some cases, not every human being has the equal, right side and the left side equally, distributed. It is like in some cases, in some individuals' case, the right side is more activated as opposed to the left side. Depending on that, so we have different personalities and thinking power, and whether you are logic or rational or you are more emotional, everything is based on which part of your brain is more activated. So this is just another funny quote, like follow your heart. Most of the time we say that, okay, I have done it with my heart, or my heart was broken when I heard this. But what it says is that, okay, follow your heart, that is all fine, but take your brain with you, which means that everything what we do is actually controlled or decided by our brain. So one of the most important aspects when we talk about a brain, or we might have heard about neurons. And inside the neurons, we have certain chemicals that we call as neurotransmitters. So there are certain aspects that we usually do not relate it to our brain. For example, our heart rate. When we think about the functioning of our heart or the heart rate, we do not really relate it to our brain. But actually, there are specific neurotransmitters or specific part of our brain that controls our heart rate, our breathing rate, or our sleep cycles, whether you sleep longer or you sleep less, or your sleep is disturbed, or even digestion. Sometimes you have problems, you don't feel like you are hungry, or sometimes you eat too much. These are all related to our how our brain functions, our thoughts, our processes that is happening in our brain decides all these aspects. So mood and concentration, that there is no need to explain much. And muscular movement, everything is controlled by neurotransmitters. I want to just talk about two particular neurotransmitters. Those are GABA and serotonin. Both of them are extremely important when we talk about learning disabilities among children. As you can see that GABA neuroreceptors, if you have any deficiency of GABA, this leads to anxiety among people, and sometimes or often restlessness. And serotonin is very important in controlling a person's well-being, brain, and positive thinking. Otherwise, deficiency of serotonin again leads to depression and anxiety. So serotonin especially is extremely important, because there is no treatment for depression. And if you, whether it's a child or a teacher, enter into, for whatever can be the reason, enter into the medically approved depression state, that there are no treatments as of now, because it's very difficult to treat such conditions in the brain. And most of the time, to have enough serotonin in your system, what is suggested is to have exposure to sunlight and exercise. That is why people often ask you to do regular exercise, and you have to have some outdoor life. So let's come very quickly to the neuroscience of learning and memory. So sometimes you might have heard that the child is very stressed, which is actually not good. Don't be stressed about, even if you have some issues in your learning or studies. But there are certain studies that show that there are some positive effects that stress has in the learning process. What you see here on the left-hand side is a classic inverted U curve that plots the stress level to the performance level, in education. So what it shows is that low level of stress means no stress means the child is very easygoing. That means, of course, the performance level will be very poor. And if the child is extremely stressed, high stress, this again will not help in his or her studies. Whereas if you look at the center part here, that you can see that a moderate level of stress actually gives a very good learning outcome or in terms of performance level. So what does it do actually? It is because when you have a certain level of stress, your brain releases a chemical called cortisol. When cortisol is present in your brain, in your body, so there will be a certain level of um, performance improvement that happens due to the presence of cortisol. So, in order to produce that cortisol in a child's brain or anybody's brain, what you need to do is create a moderate level of stress in the class. How do you, naturally, a teacher might ask, how do I generate sort of stress in the class? You don't need to, scold them, or you don't need to make big noise or something. You can just change the usual dynamic of the classroom. Usually, a teacher goes, everybody knows, even sometimes students know which corner the teacher would stand, the way the teacher would stand, the way the teacher would speak. Instead of having that routine methods, we can bring in some unfamiliar situations, change the dynamic in the classroom. What they suggest is play a music, maybe not even necessary that you have to play a music, but it can be just change the dynamic of the classroom from time to time. And the discussion format can be changed. Instead of the teacher starting with the class, you can ask the students to start the discussion. Immediately there would be a level of stress generated in the class, and the class become more attentive, and they know that, okay, the teacher started a discussion, it might come to us, so the brain would become alert due to the large level of cortisol in your body. So individual participation is extremely important. The teacher standing there and teaching and everybody is listening, 30 students, 40 students sitting and watching the teacher would never give a good learning outcome. So in order to have a good learning outcome, and again to have a sort of a stress level, you need to call every child, or individual participation during the class is extremely important. So you can call what they call is a cold calling. You can call one student just in the class, just call one child and ask to start the class, give something, a review of what they studied in the previous class, or what the knowledge they have about the topic you're going to teach this particular day, can create sort of a stress. They know that, okay, you start with one student, you move to the other child, then they know that, okay, next could be me. So this would actually help in the proper learning of in a classroom. So what is the most essential for optimal learning output? I will just list few things that is extremely important, which is what we often miss, whether for a teacher, when there is extra work or some important work to finish, they usually miss their sleep, they probably miss their food, or they don't even go outside of their room. Whether it is a student or a teacher, adequate sleep, good nutrition, balanced diet, and regular exercise is extremely, extremely important, because these aspects promote the neuroplasticity, which means that the ability of our neuron cells to change, to modify, and neurogenesis, it's to formation of new neuron cells. And also to keep the cortisol and dopamine. I did not talk about dopamine. Excess amount of dopamine means you will be extremely relaxed, and excess amount of cortisol means you will be extremely stressed. So a good balance between these two neurotransmitters are extremely important, and adequate sleep, good nutrition, and regular exercise would keep these two guys in balance. So if you spend a whole night cramming the lessons, and you skip the meals, and you don't even move out of your room, this will not help you in your academic performance. This is something very important, and instructors and students should be very well aware of it. This image, I am pretty sure everybody is aware of. This is the popular Bloom's taxonomy, and we mostly talk about what is important in the modern learning. What we want is the students will reach the upper two levels of this pyramid, and we all often complain that the bottom two levels, the students are in our system, they are only most of the time cramming and remembering certain questions and answers, and they go and write the exams. So, but there is a catch in this. That is where I'm coming to in the next part. So there are two processes of learning. One is called active learning. The other one is called passive learning. Most of the time in our system, our problem is that the students are passive learners. So they do not have the intrinsic motivation to learn or study. Instead, they do because of some extrinsic, pressure from parents or from wherever. So in order to have the active learning, So cognitive functions associated with the lower brain of the lower levels of that Bloom's taxonomy, as I have shown you earlier, these are associated with a particular part in your brain called hippocampus. So if you want to move to the higher level of that Bloom's taxonomy, where the top two part, you need to have the bottom part extremely clear, because the hippocampus is the one that keeps you in the understanding, helps you in understanding and memory of the concepts or anything that you hear or you study. So unless those parts are very solid, because the base should be clear in order to build that pyramid upward, and that is controlled by hippocampus in your brain. So I'll move forward. So this here, as you can see here, that it's a small part in your brain that is called hippocampus that controls the memory, and the understanding and remembering is actually controlled by the hippocampus. So now I'll tell you, when is this hippocampus active? Is hippocampus active throughout our life? This is a actual electron microscopic image of a hippocampus. Again, it is not that much important, but just look at the right hand side. It's actual data. It's a fluorescence image of a newborn's hippocampus. All these colored, green color shows the presence of hippocampal neurons in your brain. And you look at this brain section of a 35-year-old person, you can see absolutely no green color, means there are no new hippocampal neurons are present when you are 35 years old. So what does it mean? Here it also shows that which age group where the new neurons are born in a hippocampus. This statistics actually shows that at the time of birth, you have maximum number of new hippocampal neurons. By the year of 1, it comes down to less than 25%. Now you see around 7 years, it's very, very minimal. And when you go upward, there are no new neurons being formed in the hippocampus. And as I mentioned before, hippocampus is the part where which controls the memory and learning. So now let's come to our aspect of importance of early childhood education. That is primary education between elementary and primary, that between 3 years to 10 years of age. That means from nursery till grade 4 or 5 is the age where we can do miracles. If you work hard, if you focus, every school would focus in having the best teachers in this segment, we can actually develop self-learners, so that when they pass on to grade 5 or 6, they will already become self-learners, so that there will be that intrinsic motivation among them, because their hippocampus will be perfectly conditioned. And hippocampus is extremely important when it comes to learning of languages. What they say is that till the age of 10, a child's hippocampus can be subdivided into multiple fragments. They say up to 5 fragments is absolutely no problem. This means 5 languages can be easily learned by a child, which will never be overwritten. That means if a child learns Punjabi, Hindi, English, and any other language like French or German, all these languages will have separate segments in the child's brain, in the hippocampus, and they will never forget. There will be no overlapping. Child will be able to, whenever they are in that situation of that particular language, the child will be able to think in that language. Not only that they think in their mother tongue, and then they translate into that particular language. This will happen only if you promote those childhood education, and especially languages. So this is very quickly, I will scan through it. The primary education, it is not the role only of the school. There is a very huge role by the family and the parent-child interaction and the development. These 3 aspects are usually happening at home. The child will come to school only at the age of 3. By then, there is at least one language. The mother tongue has already been developed. The way to speak, the politeness, all that sort of things will come from the parent-child interaction till the age of 3. Then only the child will come to us. And if you remember the chart I have shown you before, by the age of 3, the child's hippocampus, new hippocampal development is already very minimal. So whatever happens, this is extremely important to have parents, make parents aware of this scenario, that till the age of 3, most of the brain development or the key development in the brain has already happened. So we always hear about this LSRW aspects: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So again, I want to stress on this aspect that in our system we start with writing and reading, but this should not be the case. We learn our mother tongue just by listening to our parents, and then we reproduce. So listening and speaking is the most important starting stages in learning any language. We can directly, we don't need to go for any theory books. We know how we learn our mother tongue. So this is the method to follow. And even from starting from nursery classes, teachers should focus. Writing and reading is important, but before that, listening and speaking must be given more importance. Then only the language development will become appropriate. So here this is again another representation of that Bloom's taxonomy. The bottom two part, as I said before, understanding and remembering, is controlled by hippocampus. Then only once these two foundations are ready, then only the child will be able to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. And these 4 steps, the top 4 stages, are the ones that are missing in our system. That is why our students end up going for rote learning. So this slide, I think I'll skip. So why we say that students should be in control of the classrooms? The reason is that when students take control of learning, this process in neuroscience perspective, they call it as top-down processing. That means that learners would listen to a lot of information. The teacher would be giving lectures. There would be books, or there will be discussions. They are, accumulating a lot of information in their into their brain, and then they can elaborate on what they perceive, and they can actually make their own opinion by adding their own opinion based on their life experience, and they would shape their opinion based on all those parameters. When this process takes place, the learning will be more effective, and the student would engage in into the higher order level of thinking. Now, what in our system that happens in the neurological terms, this is a bottom-up processing. This means that it's a passive information being fed to the child's brain, and the child would think that the teacher is teaching. Okay, I have it in the notebook. The teacher has given me the notes, and these are the questions that will be coming in the examination. I'll keep it somewhere. I never put any, stress or interest in understanding or elaborating any of those information. I know that this material is with me. The questions are going to come from here. I will do it at some point, maybe a week before the examination. This is the bottom-up processing, and which is a failed process, and this will lead to weak memories. And the child would, for example, a child, whatever he or she studies in grade 7, you ask him in grade 8 or 9, the child cannot answer. The reason is we follow this bottom-up neural processing. We need to go to the top-down processing, where we have to bring the child as to take control of the learning process, and teachers should stay as the facilitators. The reason is this. So another thing is that we always talk about, you might have heard several times, any of the mathematical concepts or anything that you teach, it has to, those information that you learn should connect to some of their knowledge that they know already. And it should relate to anything that related in day-to-day life. Because unless something is meaningful to them, our brain, it is nobody's fault, the brain will never connect it in a logical fashion and would remember. So connect it, every mathematical concept, whether you are teaching geometry, whether you are teaching trigonometry, whatever it is, you connect it to day-to-day life and make the information meaningful to them. For example, a child or anybody can remember on birthday or parents' birthdays or some relative's birthday than a random 6-digit number. So why? Because the random 6-digit number does not give any logic in their brain. Or even if you bring in any new numbers, try to make some logics so that will stay within their brain. Logical arrangement of information in the brain is extremely important. So what these call in the psychological terms, they call it as a elaborative encoding. So in order to connect any information, making it meaningful. So that, as I said before, any of the course content should be connected to day-to-day life. And another problem in our system is that exams are done to test the child at the end of the session. or end of the year. So that is not the way. Actually, test or exams should be considered as a diagnostic purpose, not to rate somebody good or bad. It should be done every, weekly if possible, or if not daily, weekly, monthly, and then it should be the testing should make a child understand or realize where I stand and what I need to do. It is like you're going for a blood test or ECG or anything that would tell you what is the health issue, what treatment has to be taken. So tests should never be taken as a end goal. When you finish the chapter, you test. No, you should do it, during the teaching process. And the procrastination and cramming is a major issue in our case. We always try to, delay things. We miss deadlines. That we should never allow. Whatever has been decided in the classroom by the teacher must be followed. You should never allow the child to take advantage, or your teacher should give that. Even if the students are not ready for the exam, conduct it. So they will get that idea that, okay, procrastination will not work. Deadline means deadline, and whatever I have to do, I need to do. These things are extremely important, especially at the younger age when the brain is starting to develop. So sometimes students, I already discussed this, sometimes students learn or sometimes don't learn. The reason is, as I mentioned earlier, it's the extrinsic motivation of fear of failure, or they would say that, okay, the neighbor's child is doing this and you have to do this, or your cousin has done this, you have to also become a doctor. And conflicting expectations are the reason why students are forced to learn to score. That is again not learning, they're just studying for the examination. So we need to devise certain strategies to develop intrinsic motivation. So every time your lesson plan should be devised so that the students can solve a problem using the course material. So that must be within the lesson plan when you're planning this. And any of the problem that you're giving to the child should relate it to the students that is related to their pre-knowledge or the students are already interested in. And always connect to the course material with non-academic world. This is extremely important. If you're completely into the academic world and no relation to the day-to-day life, this will again defer the learning process. And students would be interested in certain events. Certain experiments can be, you have 3 sets of experiments you can do, but pick the one that the students would be more interested. Pick the examples where the students would be more engaged. Think about the backbencher, not only about the number 1 and number 2 child in your class. So again, I repeat, the most essential aspects are adequate sleep, good nutrition, and regular exercise, because they would help, good sleep would help to flush out neurotoxins accumulated in the brain. During the day, you wake up at 6 o'clock, you go to bed at 10 at night. During the time, our brain is functioning continuously. Even in my first slides, I told you, even your heartbeat, everything in your body is controlled by the brain. For this, our brains and neurons are continuously working. Every reaction has always have some products and byproducts. These byproducts are neurotoxins that are extremely bad for our brain. That is the reason why after a busy day, we feel sleepy. When you sleep, if you sleep well, those neurotoxins will be flushed out of our brain, and then you feel fresh. So anytime you feel tired, take a sleep, good sleep, then your brain will be fresh. That is the reason why people say that, okay, after waking up in the morning, the brain is fresh for studies. The reason is the neurotoxins will be flushed out. And few tips to keep your brain sharp and active. Spend time every day reading, even if it is few pages. And if possible, writing if you have the abilities, or not abilities, interest, or if possible, both. So this will keep your brain, different parts of your brain, very, very active. So you can, even if you are retired, never stop learning. So you can attend a class, you can go to a lecture. Now plenty of lectures are available on internet, webinars are available, or you can even acquire a new skill, even if it's a cooking. You know certain things, you want to study something new, even if it's a new recipe that you learn, this enhances your brain's power. And some those board games and these challenging crossword games like Sudoku and puzzles help actually. So I don't know if you have seen this. I have seen when traveling in metros and everything in New York and Paris, people would be standing. There is no space to even stand. People would be just doing the Sudoku games on their newspaper, because this actually helps them, and they are very much focused into it. This helps their to sharpen their brain activities. And memory games, board games, as I said before, and uh, add new hobbies, to have add whatever you probably have a set of hobbies, add new hobbies. Everything new would enhances your brain's power and motivation. And whenever there is a problem, there is not only one solution to a problem. Every time there can be multiple solutions. So brainstorming, just instead of thinking or sitting on your own, you can have a multiple people group, and you go for brainstorming and come up with several ways to get to a solution. That also helps in your sharpness, and come up with the quick solutions in future once you practice it. And after all, what is most important is rest, relax, and laugh, right? Instead of stressing and uh, without having any sleep, that never help you to fulfill your work. You need to do the opposite. So with this, I think my time is up. I started with the aspects of brain, neurotransmitters. I talked about what is important in early childhood education, why early childhood education is important, which part of our brain actually controls that, what needs to be done to keep our brain fresh and sharp. So, as I said, learning involves changes in the brain, and neurogenesis, which means new neuronal cells being produced, and neuroplasticity, ability of neurons to move. It begins from the age 0, the time the child is born, not after when they are class 12. And hippocampus, as I told you before, plays an important role, but this lasts only till the age of 10. So all the formal education, whatever formation we want to do, how we want to mold a child, should be done by the age of 10. So with this, I think I'm I I'm done with my presentation. So if you have any questions, any remarks, any suggestions, I am happy to answer. Thank you, Shilpi. Did I take too long, or did I respect the time?
No, it was absolutely within time. Um, See, for us, this topic is a very new thing, Mr. Dr. Gopalakrishnan.
Right.
We have never been acquainted to this. Like we heard about it, but never in
Right.
such detail. So we have not many questions coming from the audience on this, but
Right.
yes, what I mean, we have understood the concept entirely. So, do you think that the present pedagogy that we are using, for example,
Yeah.
you also mentioned the Bloom's pedagogy and the
Uh,
Bloom's taxonomy.
right.
So, what we are applying now that this thing has been discovered and this thing has been now accepted, is there a need of change in those pedagogies and taxonomies and the way we approach the teaching learning process?
So my answer to this is, I think the pedagogy is fine. In a nutshell, it is fine, but the execution is where the problem is. So when it comes to the schools, even the parents would want to have nursery 3-year-old child should be tested. Actually, if you look into any of those Finnish model, Swiss model, we talk about the best education, there is no testing at that age, right? So the pedagogy as such is fine, but we start a lot of information, a lot of study too early. So actually, at the very young age, what needs to be done is the motor skills and their listening skills, their speaking skills. What we do is we try to make them learn multiplication tables, make them write this and that. This is where the changes are required, and I think which is very well described in the national education policy. What we need to do is to adapt the national education policy and to implement that in letter and spirit. With that come into place, I think by the end of primary education, we will be able to carve out self-learners, and they will be looking for information than we are, right now we are, forcing them to learn.
Right. And yes, you were like talking about how to increase, the by exercising or by playing
Yeah,
some
yeah,
intelligent games. but then parents also feel like these things will get them addicted, or
Yeah,
they might not leave it. So
right.
is that also a part of, like, is are these kind of addictions that narrowing down your brain limits?
So addiction is a broad definition. So, for
Yeah,
example,
I understand.
exercise. Yeah, it has a very broad. That's why I'm saying whenever we talk about addiction, we say it in the negative sense. So, for example, a person is addicted to alcohol or to cigarette or to
Hmm.
drugs.
Hmm.
But certain people, you might even notice that the people who go for biking, you would see even in hard winter they will not stop. Those guys, even in hard winter in December and January, you would see that those guys go for biking. Why? That is also
Yeah,
sort of an addiction. That is sort of an addiction. We can use that word because that produces certain neurotransmitters in our brain. It gives us a feel of, feel good. When I do exercise, I feel good. So we have to have an equal amount of feel good activities in our day to day life. If a child is forced to go to the class at 8 o'clock, excuse me, in the morning, comes back home at 3, maybe within an hour or something, the child would again be forced to go for some additional tuition classes or something. This actually will not lead to proper learning. They might get numbers 99%, 95%. There are a lot of cases. I'm just saying it very, with first hand information. Our students, after cracking these entrance examinations and join IITs and those kind of higher institutes, they end up struggling to even get 20% marks in their first term semester exam. The reason is that the learning that we follow at school level is not adequate. This does not lead them for any learning. The proper balance of exercise, general reading, and uh, and then the actual curriculum learning. There has to be a balance, without which the process will be futile. And I want to add one more point here, Shilpi, because now the government CBSE is already started changing the question examination patterns. Already in CBSE exams, the questions are not asked, the direct question like we used to have, like dash is responsible for photosynthesis. That sort of questions are going. Little by little, they are increasing the critical thinking based questions. So why those questions are important? Because then the child would have to analyze the information that was already been registered in the brain. Then they have to connect different topics to come up with the answer. This is coming in the I don't know, maybe in the next 2 3 years, this will be up there, and we need to prepare our students for that. So what you asked me is whether the parents would think that, okay, these hobbies and everything would tamper this. No, we need, as of now, probably yes, but in the coming years it has to change, and we need to give schools. Now what they do is they take a back foot, because the parents want this and we give this. No, we need to motivate, we need to sensitize the parents also. They need to, because they do not know all these things, and the school has a major role to play to
One
to conduct and motivate.
thing I
Yeah,
wanted to ask you, um, as educationists these days, one topic which is there, which mostly teachers are talking about, since the time the pandemic has started, we
right.
have actually experienced that children have stopped writing. Even
Yeah,
we have stopped writing, for that matter. We are more on our, like, keypads all the time. So there is a fear in the teachers. As an English teacher, even I have a fear that
yeah.
children will lose their skills of writing and handwriting, or and of thinking. Is it associated that your thinking creativity is related to your handwriting? When you're
Yes,
writing with your
yeah,
hand,
you're right.
you are more
Yes,
creative rather than on the keypad.
yes, it is.
Sorry.
No, keypad or writing. Writing, handwriting, or writing essay, per se. What I'm saying, which I
Uh-huh.
told you, I said that earlier, because writing and reading involves a coding and decoding process. For example, I have some thoughts in my brain
Yeah.
which I translate into, this is coding basically in some language. I write it in English, or I write it in Hindi, or someone else would write it in
Yeah.
French.
Yeah.
These are codes. When I read it again, I am decoding that.
Yeah.
Right? When I read it, I am decoding that. So this coding decoding process that takes place in the brain helps in a better learning process. That is why when you sometimes you read it, you don't remember. Whereas the same thing, you write it down, you remember it well. Remember it well. So writing is extremely important, even as a teacher. Even for example, I stop. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a student. Nothing. I'm a retired person. I'm, let's say, 65-year-old. If I want to keep my brain sharp, it's better for me to not for any exams or nothing, but writing would make this process, coding, decoding, active, and your brain will be more sharp.
Right.
So it definitely has a role. It definitely has a role.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Gopalakrishnan, for being here and bringing this very new topic into, like, we did have people talking about it, but not um, dissecting it the way you did
Yeah.
today
Yeah.
and
No, but
understanding.
that is Shilpi. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity because someone who worked in neuroscience research coming into education field is very rare. That is why you might
Yeah,
have
that
noticed
is,
they are mostly
and
into this.
it's actually a new concept to understand basically how
But we know
children
everything.
learn.
We know that you have to sleep. We know that the early childhood education is important. We know that cramming is not
But
good.
how?
But why?
How?
How? What is actually happening? That
What
is
is the
important.
science behind it?
Science
And
behind it.
like,
But
why do we
like
say
since I am
we
the
we hear
yeah, yeah,
that when a child is getting admitted, a toddler is getting admitted in a play group or somewhere, so the early childhood teacher says, oh, you know what, children, they convince the parents, or they give this amazing fact to the parent that a 6-month child can also start reading, and it's a proven fact, it's an experiment which has been proved. But then how it happens, what is the science behind it, is
right,
something that we did not know. We do
yeah,
know that they can read. You can show the flashcards every day to the child for a certain period of time, and the child starts reading,
right.
right? Because that image gets somewhere into his head and he recognizes not the
And
letters but the
not right.
image of those letters. So
Exactly,
you
exactly.
say that's reading. And we
Yeah,
even I think oh my god, I think we are getting into it. I am understanding what
right,
actually
right,
it is. When
right.
we start reading, maybe I do not know the language well, but I know how to read the language, because I have no relationship with the letters, but I have an image of the
Image
letters.
registered in your brain,
Yes,
right?
so if
So
I may not be knowing Bengali, but I can
yeah,
read Bengali
yeah,
because I
exactly,
have the image in somewhere in my head. I've seen it so
exactly.
many times.
No, no,
So
I
I think,
myself, for example, now I live in Punjab. I didn't have any exposure to Punjabi. Even now,
yeah,
because I can read few, words right now because of, those images are clear in my brain. So
yeah,
in this aspect, what I wanted to say is that again, those images, are saved in our brain as memory, and that
yeah.
memory is that little part in your brain, hippocampus, which is active only till the age of 10, maximum by 10. Afterwards there are no neurons, so everything has to be conditioned, should be done before that age.
Okay,
After
all
10,
right.
10 years old, there are no neurons being formed
Now,
in that.
see, now we can connect this to the
Uh,
entire personality of a child, and we say that
everything.
you can teach, you can make a child's personality by the age of 10 or something,
That
because
is the
after
reason.
that you have to teach him
After
how to manage his personality.
exactly
Then you
done,
cannot
because
make it.
you
Then
cannot make
you
it, because that is why teachers often complain that the same child, I am the same teacher, maybe I was teaching the same child, maybe you were my student, you were in my
yeah,
class 6, the way you were would change when you move to grade 8 and be
yeah,
connected to the
obviously.
adolescent stage or whatever. It is not that. It is like, the our conditioning of that brain functioning has completely changed. It's nobody's fault. That is how it is. How we condition them till the age of 10 matters for their rest of their life.
Got it. Now I can able to connect, those philosophies and those concepts that we've been hearing since childhood. A child's
Right.
mind is a blank slate, write whatever you want
Exactly.
to write.
Like
We
that.
used to take it as a philosophy. Now there's a science behind it.
Science.
So thank
I
you,
mean,
doctor.
philosophy was the origin, the first form of science. And you might have seen some videos in Russia and Canada and those countries. a child just 2 or 3 months old, they put the
Yeah.
child directly into the pool, and the child would never drown. They
Yes,
would come.
yes, yes,
Right?
yes, yes,
So,
yes.
and we do it? No, we would be afraid to do that in our culture. But the reason is that there is that ability in a child's brain to circumvent that sort of situations.
Yes, that's right.
Right?
That's right. Thank you so much, Doctor, once again. And
Yeah,
we'd love to have you on our platform once more with another interesting topic related to the same thing.
yeah. I will try to make it less scientific and more into like I will try next time. I'll do it that way.
Thank you so much once
All
again.
right.
Have a
Thank you.
lovely evening.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Thank you.